Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Beautiful Bets, a podcast from Vegas Insider. My name's Andrew Beasley and I'm coming to you from the UK, and I have to say there hasn't been too much World Cup fever gripping us over here in this country just yet, even though the tournament is only a few days away. I'm joined as ever from America by Eric Wynalda. And Eric, what's the mood like in America ahead of the World Cup?
Well, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, of course, and with the anticipation, this World Cup is right around the corner. It's actually, if you really think about it, as we do this podcast, it's less than 3 days away because the first game of the World Cup would already have taken place on Sunday, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm looking forward to that. That's Qatar and Ecuador, but it feels weird. That's the only word I can use to describe this. There's a lot of people that are saying, "Hey, when does it start again?" And that's just not something that I'm used to. I'm usually with in my circles, people are very excited about it. They're looking forward to it, but it just seems like this World Cup, everybody's just trying to squeeze it into their schedule. So feels odd. It does. It feels very different.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we'll all get into it once it starts. But it's not really World Cup mood yet. It's normally the summer over here when it happens. So for it to be in the winter is very strange. Obviously, we're going to get onto the big games at the World Cup, but it would be remiss of us not to just quickly touch on our predictions last week, mainly because we did very well. We had Liverpool to win, Arsenal to win to 0, which happened, Newcastle to beat Chelsea. Brighton against Aston Villa, we differed on that, but you were correct. Villa got that one. And although we were both sceptical of Tottenham, they won 4-3 against Leeds, but they had to come from behind 3 times. So
we did say it would be a shootout. I think that watching the way Jesse Marsch lines his side up, he doesn't deviate. He does not deviate. So he's going to constantly push the issue and the envelope. And if you stay with it and you have the quality that Tottenham has, you'll be able to eventually get the goals. But again, cardiac arrest over here. I mean, it's hard to watch these games when it comes to Leeds right now.
Yeah, obviously we spoke last week about how they'd beaten Bournemouth 4-3. So they had a 4-3 win and followed it up with a 4-3 defeat, which can't have happened too often. But as you say, it certainly makes for entertaining games, but not the easiest to watch if you've got skin in the game to know which way it's going to go. Right. And in the Bundesliga, pretty well. Again, you had Leverkusen, Leipzig, and Freiburg. They all won. I did say Dortmund. They lost 4-2 to Mönchengladbach. But yep. On the whole, it was a pretty good week.
Well, the one thing we did say is that when it was all said and done, second place Berlin would end up in 5th. Mm-hmm. Leipzig made the jump, and Frankfurt did as well. So, and Freiburg. I think as we move forward, it'll be very interesting to see how Berlin responds to that amazing start. But everything's starting to level out, if you will. Bayern might take a run at this and get themselves maybe even closer to 8 to 10 points clear at some point. But good to see Leverkusen coming back. That was a wonderful result for Xabi Alonso. It looks like he's finally got a hold on that team. Defensively, we knew that he would sort things out, and so watch for them to be, after this World Cup is over, a team that might be a good bet.
Yeah, I saw they've been the 4th best team in the Bundesliga since Alonso took over, and even won a friendly today against St. Louis, I think I saw. But yeah. Not quite sure why that's happening, but good for them for winning that one.
Well, I mean, St. Louis has, with their technical director, a lot of German ties, so they'll expect St. Louis to try and tap into that market. We'll see how that all works out.
Yeah, absolutely. But obviously, we're here to focus on the World Cup, not least because England and the USA have been drawn in the same group. They both get their campaigns underway on Monday. And obviously, we'll talk a bit about the 2 games. But before we do, just a quick look at the odds. To win Group B, England are minus 240, USA plus 550, Wales plus 650, and Iran plus 2,000. And it's somewhat similar in the odds to qualify. England are the massive favourites, minus 1,200. USA minus 105. Wales plus 120. Iran plus 400. Now, those prices are taken from an American site. I did check one in the UK. The odds are longer for the US and Wales, more like plus 110 and plus 138 to qualify. But they are in the same order, even with the bookies in the UK. So Everyone's got it down as England, then USA, then Wales, then Iran. I'm not so sure about that, but I guess we can get into that in a bit. The first of the two games in the group is England against Iran. That kicks off at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. England are minus 275 to win. The draw is plus 380. Iran are plus 1050, which is obviously massive. These sides have never met before. I think it's going to be a pretty close game, but how do you see it playing out?
Very close, too close to call. If I'm being honest, I think that there's a couple of factors that people are not really thinking about. If you check the weather right now, at 10 o'clock in the morning, yesterday it was already 87 degrees. It'll be in the 90s for this game. There was a lot of talk about how these stadiums were going to be immaculate and they're going to be air conditioning, and there was going to be there's a lot of promises that were made. I do think the overall weather is going to have an effect on the England side. I think Iran is very well accustomed to this. One of the biggest advantages they have is that many of their back line don't play domestically. So, maybe they're not names that you would look at and say, oh, I should be afraid of this guy, or this guy's a great player or whatnot. This really is their opportunity to play well in a World Cup against the likes of England. And to make a name for themselves and possibly move on. The likes of someone like Taremi, who moved to Portland and has done great. To Porto and has done great things. I think when you look at the history of Carlos Queiroz as a manager, and there's a backstory there. He was away from the team but he was with him for 8 years. He was away for a bit. They made a change. It wasn't working, and he was immediately brought back. And he's instilled, he's really galvanized this group. And I don't think people are taking him seriously, and they should. Iran is always going to be a defensive unit. They'll never have games where they're going to have the majority of the possession. That's just not the way they play. But they do have a couple of weapons up top, as I mentioned, with Mehdi Taremi. And if this guy gets loose with some of the frailties of this England back line, they could surprise some people. If I was going to make an outlandish bet, I would say England lose, and they would lose 1-0 if they fail to score against this side. And Taremi has a good moment, but everything in my inner is telling me that this will probably end up a tie, and that would be a massive disappointment for England. But this is not a throwaway game, to say the least. This is a game that they will struggle with because of the defensive effort that Iran will put forth. Keep in mind, they almost qualified for the last World Cup, and they've been able to shut down the likes of Lionel Messi in a much younger state previously. So this is, in Germany, he's called a Verteidigungsspezialist. That's how you say that. I talked to German television earlier this morning, and that means he is a expert at defense. And this is a guy that knows the English mentality as well. Queiroz was for a long time with Manchester United. So don't throw this one away, folks. This one might be a tricky one. And it might not be, though, I can't believe England didn't win, because I would very much not be surprised if England did not win this game.
Yeah, you mentioned the last World Cup, which they went to with the same manager. I mean, they were drawn in a group with Spain and Portugal and nearly got out of it. I mean, their three results were a 1-0 win, a 1-0 loss, and a 1-1 draw. So
one goal away from getting out of that group. And those kind of experiences in World Cup competitions, it's something to remember. And I just think that the realities of the climate are going to be very different for this English side. There's already plenty of comments of teams that have players playing in England from all over the world, from the EPL and the Championship and whatnot. But this is a lot on your lungs. It really is. It's a different air, and it feels different. It's dry, and it's very hard to breathe. And it's not just a matter of staying hydrated. Your body needs more time than 7 to 8 days to react to this. Therefore, Iran has a massive, massive advantage over everybody else in the group.
Yeah, you mentioned Mehdi Taremi of Porto. He's got 6 goals and 5 assists in his last 10 games for them, and he was the joint 3rd top scorer in the Champions League group stage this season. So he's a man in form, and he can hurt England. I think my concern from an England perspective is that they'll struggle to score if Harry Kane doesn't score, or if they don't get one from set pieces. That's been a pattern for them for a long time. Kane won the Golden Boot at the last World Cup, and I believe he's the favourite to do so again. I'm not convinced. I wouldn't be picking him in the Golden Boot market, but what do you think of his chances, or how it might go generally?
I don't think he'll get his goals, but they come from the spot, but it will be difficult to find. I think he might have his best day against Wales. That might be just the familiarity of it all and everybody dealing with the same problems. He might get 2 and 3 of that one, but I think he might struggle against the U.S. and he certainly is going to struggle against Iran. So I think he's 9-1 to be. I think Benzema is also in that conversation. Mbappe, the usual suspects are expected to be at the top of that list. But in a World Cup, you really don't know who's going to explode, and it really comes down to that first stages in group play. Watch out for the Netherlands. I think the Netherlands are in a group, even though they're dealing with the likes of Qatar and playing at home, and no home side has never not progressed to the second round. That's really not something that I think will bother the Netherlands. Got a couple of guys in that group that might end up being on that list as well.
Yeah, I actually like the look of Memphis Depay for the Golden Boot because he's quite a long price and he's playing for the strongest team in probably the weakest group. And
he takes penalty kicks. Always a big thing. You always got to look at that. Just look at, if you're going to pick a player that's going to be on your Golden Boot list, make sure that he's taking penalty kicks. It will always factor in.
Yeah, and obviously people sort of think, you might be better choosing somebody who might get to the final. But when you look at the history of the Golden Boot, it's almost always someone who scores the most in the group stage because that's where the most goals are available. And as I say, playing for a strong team in a weak group, I think he looks like a decent shot. I do think England will win just about, but I will definitely be going low on goals. You can get -135 for under 2.5 goals. Even +200 for under 1.5 goals, I think could definitely be an option, maybe 1-0 England or something like that. But it does feel like people in this country are expecting England to win that one relatively easily, and I don't think that's going to be the case at all.
That's going to be a tough game, and it's going to be a very unique start to this World Cup because we've seen other teams still some little knickknacks, injuries, and whatnot. People are still dropping out of the side. France has got a bunch of weird stuff going on over there. They only picked 25 players and couldn't make up their mind in the last one, and then Nkunku gets hurt the first day in practice, so they're really swimming sideways over there. But I think the start of the World Cup, the feel of the World Cup, it always has its effect on everyone. Everyone wants to see, what is this going to feel like? What is this going to look like? And historically speaking, the first game it always pushes us in one direction or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And while the bookmakers expect England to win that comfortably, the odds for the USA versus Wales game, which kicks off at 2 p.m. Eastern time, are far, far closer. USA are priced at +170 to win. It's +205 for the draw and +210 for a Wales win. So very little to separate the three outcomes. The last meeting was in 2020. That was a 0-0 draw. Probably doesn't tell us too much ahead of this. So putting any biases aside, of course, how do you see this one playing out?
Well, I mean, I think the X factor is always going to be Gareth Bale. I mean, you go back to June when they had to beat Ukraine, and of course, it's Gareth Bale with the goal that got them into the World Cup, and then they rattled off 5 straight losses or 5 games without a win. And obviously, they're playing massive opponents and the likes of Belgium and whatnot. But you look at the way the MLS just came to an end, and he put his cape on, came off the bench, and wins the game or at least brings them back into it, takes them to a shootout. So he's capable of the massive moments. I think the biggest disadvantage that the U.S. has is they play Gareth Bale and Cymru, if we're going to call him Wales appropriately. They play Gareth Bale first. I don't think he lasts the tournament. I think he does eventually pull up with some sort of injury because of the conditions, because of all of this. But to catch him in the best 25, 30 minutes of his World Cup is what we're going to have to deal with as a country. So that's why it's so close. If he was out of the equation and it was Brennan Johnson and maybe Kiefer Moore or David James, the only ones that we were worried about, Kiefer Moore is certainly someone to worry about. Let's face it, though, he's got 3 times as many goals as Christian Pulisic does in his time at Bournemouth. So, look, I think it's a scary team. I think they have weapons. I think they have the ability to certainly put up a defensive effort. Their players play everywhere, but it's almost seemingly like they're at Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth, and Fulham. That's where all the guys from Wales play. But it's a good team with a great spirit. So again, coming out of the gates, first game, the X factor is Gareth Bale. How our team will play is yet to be seen, but there's a lot of good energy coming out of that U.S. camp. It seems to me that they are going to go for it. They are going to try and press that back line, take their moments of rest, but take advantage of a couple of partnerships, with Aronson and Adams, who play together at Leeds, and of course Robinson and Ream, who play together at Fulham, are having a great season thus far. So the center back question is going to be, where this game is won or lost. It makes sense to me to maybe think about Carter Vickers, Cameron Carter Vickers going up against the likes of Moore. Makes a lot more sense to me than Walker Zimmerman, but I don't make the decisions over there.
No, there are a few question marks surrounding the US team. I'm not sure whether it may have been reported over there, but I was looking at the Wikipedia page for all the squads who's gone to the tournament, and at least on there, the US are the only team out of all 32 that hasn't named a captain. I don't know if they have officially, or if that's up in the air, but who would you like it to be, or who do you think it should be?
I think that's probably the discussion right now. It should be Tyler Adams. And I think that the reason for that is he is an amazing leader. Just this week, Jesse Marsh came out and in his comments where he's never seen him in this good a form. And the reality is he's had him for, I think, 7 years. I mean, going back to New York. So I think Tyler is probably the best captain. I've heard that Walker Zimmerman is in that conversation. The realities of Christian Pulisic, and a lot of people have called him Captain America in the past. I hate it when they put a tag on you that it's just the expectation is you always have to wear the band. But the realities of through the qualification process, and even this last 2-game stint of the test games before we in September that were in Spain and Dusseldorf, he wasn't fit. So he had to sit one of those out. Tyler Adams is not going to sit out. He's going to play 90 minutes and then ask if he can play another game. He's just that guy. He's been breaking records as far as all the metrics and the science behind this. He's been number one on all of those charts for, I think, a good 8 years now. I mean, he has been a part of our youth programs and has been the standard of fitness. So in this competition, you're going to need somebody out there who's going to play 90 minutes every game. That's right up Tyler Adams' wheelhouse. I don't think it is for Christian Pulisic, and with all the changes that were going to happen on that back line, it certainly can't be Zimmerman. Maybe Ream, but it's never a good thing. Never to pass around the captain's band once the tournament starts. It just doesn't. It never equates to good things.
Yeah, we'll have to see who they go for. Daniel James of Wales has said that the US have got an incredible squad. Is he just trying to put pressure on the US? And, do you think they've got a better squad than Wales, or is it sort of pretty even?
Yeah, I keep calling him David, by the way. And because I know somebody named David James. It's Daniel, I know. Watching him the other day and his inclusion in the game against Manchester United, I mean, coming off the bench, scoring a goal, not celebrating. But look, I think in these scenarios, we'll always see other teams be as complimentary as they possibly can. That does not mean that that's what they're actually thinking. If you're Daniel James, you're probably thinking about the realities of playing on that right side, going up against someone that you just have seen, or guys that I mean, let's face it. I mean, he's now playing against guys that he plays on the same club team with, on the same side. I mean, let's think about that for a second. He's just made the move to Fulham, and he's going up against Robinson and Ream. These are guys that he knows he can beat on speed, and that's something to think about. So I think for him, being complimentary is always nice, but in the back of his head, he knows he's faster than our back line, and he wants to make sure he's on the field to prove it.
Yeah, absolutely. The Wales will be looking to him, certainly, if they can't rely on Gareth Bale to play the full game.
Right.
In terms of who might feature for the US, no player in the Championship has scored more goals than Josh Sargent so far this season. He's got 9. He has the best minutes per goal ratio in the entire division. Do you think that's enough to stake a claim in the starting lineup, or who do you think is going to be up front for the US?
It might, but the logic never really prevails when it comes to Greg Berhalter. That he seemingly just goes with his gut, and he gets other information that dictates his decision making. But man, you would certainly think so, right? You know, if Sargent has been able to put the ball in the back of the net that many times against a team like Wales, which you could argue is about that level or the equal to maybe the familiarity of say, style of play that he's been immersed in for the last 6 months. Maybe, yeah, maybe that's the best decision. It will be interesting to see what decision he's made. Haji Wright has made a strong push. He was surprised to make his way into this team. The logic behind it, if we are going with logic, and Greg Berhalter said the physicality that he plays in Turkey is basically was the reason why it dictated the decision for him to make the team. That would you could certainly argue that with Josh Sargent, and if we're being honest, I think it was the reason Pepe didn't make it. He had made the move to Holland, and that was a good excuse for Greg Berhalter to say the physicality of the first division in Holland is not the same as the Championship and or the EPL and or Turkey. So you have to think that in that kind of game, it's really going to come down to it could be one of those, one of those two. I think Haji or Josh, but he's gonna have service. He'll have Reina, who's fit. He'll have Pulisic on the other side. He could possibly have Aronson. Musa could make this lineup, and Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams surrounding him. So that six that or well 5 to 6 guys that he has passing in the ball, whoever that forward is in a lucky spot. I would cut off my pinky to have that chance. That's quite a supporting cast.
Yeah, absolutely. Christian Pulisic has said he wants to change the way the world looks at US soccer. How well do they have to do to succeed, to sort of be classed as a success? Is it getting out of the group? Is it going further than that? I mean, what's the sort of reasonable expectation for them to class it as a successful tournament?
Final eight, quarterfinals. I think that's where you really say to yourself, okay, we're a contender in this competition, or even a dark horse. I think the statement alone, we've been saying that for the last 20 years. I'll never forget a statement that was made by a friend of mine, Dan Patrick, who said, "Soccer will always." He said, "Soccer is the sport of the future, and always will be." And that's the American attitude: is that we're never going to be the greatest at this sport. We're never going to be the best. So, what defines success? The world is probably looking at us, and let's be honest, saying, "Well, they didn't even make it to the last World Cup." The World Cup is getting more and more profoundly difficult to make. I mean, Italy is sitting this one out again, and this is something to think about. But I think at some point, I don't know when it will come. America will have proven itself as a talented enough team or country that we have to stop answering questions about why we're even there in the first place, or things of that nature, and have to defend the state of soccer in this country. But we do things differently over here, Matt. We just do in this country, and that's we have a different schedule. We have playoffs. We let everybody into the playoffs. We don't have promotion and relegation. So there's a lot of reasons to look at soccer, because we call it soccer. It's not football, but we call our sport a different name. But we also play, and we have a whole set of rules that differentiate ourselves from everybody. So until we do that, we're going to have to continue to answer questions like that. I think quarterfinals is the answer, long-winded answer, but Christian Pulisic is basically saying we didn't make it to the last one. We deserve to be here, and we want to prove that we deserve to be here, and that should be enough for now.
Yeah, indeed. So if you had to pick one player to be the difference maker for the US against Wales, who do you think is going to be the key man?
It'll be McKennie. I think when you look at this game, in the run of play, it's going to be difficult to find chances, but he'll sneak forward on a set piece. I think he's the guy that has consistently done that in timely moments. He's not the biggest guy, but man, he can jump. He is an incredible athlete. He has that bite. He's gonna need to go in and win a few tackles. And at least the cleverness to make the pass before the pass. We're not going to rely on him to be an assist guy. But this game will be decided on a set piece, and my bet is on Weston McKennie to get on the end of that cross.
And so, do you think 1-0 USA then, or what would be your sort of prediction?
It'll go. I do not think Wales will score. I do not. I think that there would be such an onus put on that. I unfortunately also think it's going to be a very boring game for the first 60 minutes. And it's just people call it a chess match or whatnot. This is just two teams trying to figure each other out and not make a mistake. And those always equate to very boring games when everyone's trying to be simple, to not take chances, to not the risk reward of the first game loss is too much. We have the youngest team in this World Cup. That is going to weigh on their minds. They can't go out there and be brash. And I'm just certain that every single voice in their head prior to they go out on the field will be to reiterate that. Don't make a mistake. Just find the game, be simple. And it's going to take 60 minutes before we get there. I don't think there'll be an early goal in this one. That's really my inclination. But it will come through a set piece, and if the U.S. is able to figure out the defensive side of things, which they certainly will, the first portion of the game, this game should be a low scoring victory for the United States.
Okay, well, if you think there's going to be no goals in the first half, you can back that at plus 146. If you like the sound of Weston McKennie, he's plus 800 to score any time, or plus 1400 to score the first goal. So there's some options there.
That's my bet, because it is out of left field. It really is. And, I think we always have a tendency to do this. We look to the forwards first, but if you look how the U.S. has been finding their goals lately, they didn't score at all in their last two matches, but the chances are coming through set pieces. And I think at times we are a little bit pragmatic in the way we address games. But when we look at the corner kick situations, the standard situations, this will be an opportunity for the U.S. to get on the end of something.
Yeah, it sounds like the England-US game could well be a set-piece battle, but obviously we'll talk about that in a bit more detail next week. Just to finish up on that game, USA to win 1-0 is available at plus 600, so we'll see if that one comes out. The 0-0 draw is plus 750. I sort of agree. I think it's going to be low scoring, but I think it's quite a tough one to call. So we've covered the two main games that we'll be interested in, featuring England and the USA. Obviously, between now and when we next speak, I think every team will have played at least once. So are there any other games that particularly stand out to you, either from a betting perspective, from an entertainment perspective? I mean, which games are you looking forward to?
Well, I mean, the first one, I want to see how this thing starts. I want to see what Qatar throws on the field. Their opponent will be Ecuador. Ecuador is a formidable opponent. People are not understanding that. We know Ecuador because I think there's four players that play in Major League Soccer. Three of them play for LAFC. We just saw in the MLS Cup. But looking at Ecuador, and you go to their last 5 games, Andrew. The last 5 games, there's only been 1 goal scored. 4 of those 5 results were 0-0. Now that, to me, and some formidable opponents there. I mean, they were very smart to play Saudi Arabia and Iraq, because those are very similar opponents to Qatar. Qatar is never a team that is going to dominate possession. They lost 2-0 to Canada, which is a team that we know very well. And watching that game, this one is just screaming 0-0. I want someone to score. I'm really hoping that we get a goal out of this. But Ecuador is a team that has been able to shut down the likes of Argentina back in the summer. They're not the team that on the defensive side, not on the offensive side. On the defensive side, they are very difficult to play against. The one thing that might happen, which I'm actually rooting for, is that they recognize this and they get caught up in the occasion and they really go for it. They have some speedsters. They have some players that can really test the line. So I'm really curious and to see how this World Cup starts, because it's going to start with 2 very unlikely a game that would have normally, under all normal circumstances of a World Cup, been just a game that happened that we asked later what happened on that one, what was the score. But there's going to be a lot of attention on this, and because we want to see what it looks like. So that's the one that sticks out to me as well. Nobody really gets. We don't come out of the gates with any big games. Quietly, I'll be watching Spain, the Netherlands, and Denmark. I think France is in trouble, but quietly, I'll be watching those 3. I don't think, even though Mbappe is a lightning rod, with everything going on in that French camp, they look like they're in trouble.
Yeah, and they have obviously different squads, but France have sort of self-destructed in the past. Obviously, 2002 defending champions, they went out in the group stage. And obviously, the last three defending champions before this World Cup have all gone out in the group stage as well. So, yeah, France is an interesting one. I think particularly with their midfield missing like Kante and Pogba and Matuidi from the last World Cup, I think they're not as guaranteed to do as well as you might think.
Kante is the big one. People don't realize that 5'6" man has won every trophy that anybody would ever want to win. He's the most accomplished footballer on the planet. People need to just know that, which is really interesting because the second most accomplished as far as trophies are concerned is Pedro, who's shorter than he is. So I guess size doesn't matter when it comes to trophies. You're like the guy that's almost the same height as the trophy he's holding up is the best. I think France is in trouble because of that, though. They don't have the distractions of Pogba. There's been some issues with Giroud and Benzema in the past. Griezmann is not in good form. They were going to be completely relying on Mbappe. So we'll see. And if Varane is going to miss the first game, I think he's one of the best defenders on the planet, and that will throw them off as well. So, and I don't know if you've heard this story about Lloris. Lloris is refusing to wear the rainbow armband. These are silly things, if you will, and when you really get to the idea that we're trying to focus on playing. I'm not saying that the topics and the reasons why not wearing the band aren't important, but they're distractions. And this is the one team, as you just alluded to, who cannot handle a distraction. They will implode. If I wonder how many times they fight at the dinner table and the lunch. They must fight about everything, it seems. But worried about France. They are a team that we're looking at as champions, but this, as you just said, they've won it before and then bombed out. This might be the same.
Yeah, 60 years since a team retained the World Cup. So even on that sort of law of averages, you'd think they wouldn't. They probably should win their first game because they've got Australia first up. They're minus 360 to win that. They should have too much for Australia, whatever else is going on. But yeah, interesting to see how they get on once the tournament hots up.
Don't forget, Australia has hired Gus Hiddink to be a part of their technical staff. So it might be something up his sleeve there. I'll never count Gus Hiddink out of anything. The guy's a genius. I got to meet him. I got to spend a lot of time with him. And I just think that guys like that can sometimes have a massive influence on a team that's not supposed to win. And that's clearly who Australia is. But I mean, think about South Korea. Think about Russia. Think about the teams that he's managed in the past. There's something about him. He might just very well be the secret sauce to get a good result.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, perhaps I'm underestimating them. I probably am, to be fair. That's on Tuesday, that game. Another game that day, which interests me quite a bit, is Mexico against Poland, because they're in a group with Argentina and Saudi Arabia. So you would expect Argentina to top the group, Saudi Arabia probably to finish bottom. So the Mexico-Poland game, I think, is one of the biggest games of the first set of fixtures, purely because it'll go a long way to deciding which of them goes through. I like the look of Poland, but obviously I've seen a lot more of them than I have of Mexico. Obviously, you'll know more about them than me. I mean, how are they shaping up? How do you see that game going?
Horrible. Tata Martino has really been put under immense pressure since becoming manager. Losing to America twice in the same calendar year doesn't help. 3 times actually. But if you look at this team, it's an aging squad. They've not brought Jimenez, who's been their talisman on many occasions. They're an aging team, and they're completely out of form. I think the last time I saw them play was when I watched a game in its entirety was against Uruguay, and Uruguay just cleaned the floor with them 3-0. And it was borderline embarrassing. I don't know if Mexico is going to have their act together in time. I just don't. I think Poland takes this one, and they're well traveled. They're going to have their support systems, but that just sounds like a lot of frustrated people trying to find a cerveza after this one is over, because they're going to lose to Poland. And you're right, it's going to shape up the entire group. The Argentina game takes on a whole new meaning.
Yeah, it's predicted to be a close one by the bookmakers. Both Mexico and Poland are available at plus 185 with plus 210 for the draw. But I think I'd have to side with the Robert Lewandowski factor and think that Poland should probably have too much for them.
I don't
Mexico,
know why he is not in the discussion for the Golden Boot going up against Mexico. Mexico's going to feel like a second division Spanish team, and that's kind of where he's been for a good stint there, leading La Liga with 13 goals now. So, look, I mean, let's face it, that could be a game that Mexico's World Cup could be over before it started if Lewandowski has a good day.
yeah, he could certainly put it beyond them if he has a good day, and you know, with Argentina still to play after that, then they would you'd think they'd have to struggle. While we're talking North American teams, I mean, obviously Costa Rica and Canada are both, I think, probably long shots to go through. Is there any sort of realistic hopes for either of them? Costa Rica start against Spain and Canada against Belgium, so they've both got very difficult games to kick off the tournament.
Well, I'm going to say I'll go with Canada. I'm not really putting much weight into the Costa Rica campaign. It's an odd team. They're always problematic in CONCACAF, but I don't think that they stand much of a chance. They'll probably be a 3 and out, unfortunately, and not represent CONCACAF well. Canada, on the other hand, might. There's still some speculation with Alphonso Davies, who picked up a muscle injury, still in Munich, by the way. He hasn't made his way to Qatar just yet, and the reasons behind that is the medical team in Munich is fairly fantastic. His name is Dr. Muller Wurfat. Anybody that's ever had an injury, a blood injury or a muscle injury, that's the guy you go see if you want to get back on the field. I think that this Canada team, and John Herdman is their manager, who formerly was the manager of the Canadian women's national team, and had great success with them. And it was surprising to see him come over to the men's side. But the reality is this guy is a leader. I didn't really give him enough credit. He's won the group in the qualification process. They were a very good team. They've got several players, scattered around Europe. Their goalkeeper is 35 years old, I think, but this is his last shot, his last hurrah. But and Hutchinson, I think Hutchinson's now like 38 or 39 years old, and he's still going. But don't count out Canada. Canada is in a hard group. I mean, welcome to the World Cup, right? I mean, you got to come straight into the number 2 team in the country, in the world. I think that they will put up a massive fight. They are much better than people are giving them credit. So let's see how they get out of this first game. But if I'm right, and my gut is correct, they might be the Cinderella team of this deal. They might be able to just surprise a lot of people with some ties, and 2 ties and a win will get them through if they pull that off. But those opponents are certainly they're swinging above their belt. But I do believe in this Canadian team. I've watched them all year, a couple years now, and it's an amazing story. First time back in a World Cup since 1986. It's a long time to wait, and those conditions in Mexico are fairly similar to these. So let's hope for the best. But Canada is the team that we should certainly. We don't have to bow down to them, but let's salute them because they deserve to be there.
Yeah, and obviously if they can take something from their games with Belgium and Croatia, they finish against Morocco. So if they needed something there, I mean, that's their best chance.
Not to discount Morocco. Morocco is a very good team, but they're going to find out in a hurry that Canada is real.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting to see how they get on. I think just one more, if we just look at one more game before we go, because it does have relevance for both England and the US. Senegal against Netherlands, the 2 favourites to emerge from Group A, and obviously whoever qualifies from the England-USA group will come up against them. I believe there's still doubts regarding Sadio Mane's fitness, which would obviously be a huge loss for Senegal. Netherlands, as I sort of said earlier, have been doing very well. They scored a lot of goals in qualifying. Memphis Depay, they've got Virgil van Dijk at the back, so they've got a good team. But clearly that's another big game in this first set of fixtures, which has implications throughout. So, just before we go, how do you think that one's going to turn out?
Well, I mean, I was waiting for the big question is who's going to win this thing. My answer to that is the Netherlands. I
Okay.
believe that this team, um, and they'll have to get past the United States at some point. I recognize what I'm saying by saying that the Netherlands will win this thing, but there's something special about the group. Senegal is certainly handicapped with Mane being out, at least ruled out for the first game. There was reports that they have employed several witch doctors to attend to him, and apparently that hasn't worked. I'm not laughing. I'm just I understand how serious the injury is because this team goes as Mane goes, and if he's not on the field, they are not the same team. That is very clear. Everyone would say the same thing about Egypt if Mo Salah wasn't playing. There's certain teams that need that player. They need that one guy. Um, and Mane certainly represents that to me. I think this is a game that will be a huge disappointment for Senegal. I think the Netherlands roll them. I really do. A lot of cool stories behind that. Louis van Gaal has done some very strange things. He's given the numbers to his team based on their age. That's one story that came out. He is allowing the migrant workers to meet his team and to train with his team 4 days prior to their first game. I don't know if that was really advisable. Um, Louis van Gaal had some health issues earlier this year. He has
Mhm.
overcome that. He just seems to be a much more likable Louis van Gaal. We've seen him at Ajax and Barcelona and Manchester United, and he's very standoffish or and almost contentious and rude, at times. He's just a different man right now. He's had a new lease on life, if you will, and his team loves him. I can't believe I'm saying that, and they love the environment they've created over there. So I'm a big believer in that. I think the teams that come in with the right spirit are always able to go far in this competition. But that certainly is a man. This is his last shot at it. He's now in his 70s. Louis van Gaal is a great manager. He's had wonderful stints with the Dutch team, and I think this is his time. This is his time, and I think he's tactically astute enough to handle some of the bigger games as they come, and he finally has real talent in his team, real talent, young talent that he can mold into an idea of success in a World Cup stage. I don't know what the odds are for Holland, but as soon as we get off of this thing, I think I might throw some money on that. That might be a good bet.
Well, I can tell you, Netherlands are currently ninth in the betting at plus 2,000, which seems long to me, considering, as we've said, they're in a fairly weak group. I think they wouldn't be too worried by whichever team they got from Group B, and obviously, then, as you say, they've got very good manager, proven at this level, a lot of good players. So, yeah, ninth at plus 2,000 seems a bit long to me. I think if you agree with Eric, now's the time to get on because that price is only going to come down once they've sort of navigated the group stage, which you'd have to think they will.
I see them coming out of the gates with a 3-0 victory against Senegal, and then the other games are certainly games that I think, as we mentioned, Ecuador will be much more pragmatic. They'll be very difficult to break down because of their defensive unit, but the Dutch will somehow figure out a way, and then Qatar will be the first team to not make it to the second round. They'll put up a fight, but I just don't think they have the quality.
No, I think you're probably right. If I have to pick a winner outright at this point, I'm going for Argentina at plus 1,200. They're sixth in the betting. Not the most fairly obvious shout, I suppose. But Brazil are favourites currently at plus 550. France 750. You've then got Spain 850, England 950, Germany 1150, Argentina 1,200, and then down from there. So no real surprises at the top end of the market, but. Do you think? I mean, obviously, you've said Netherlands. I mean, of the sort of more favoured teams, are there any that stand out to you?
Well, I mean, not all the way to the final, but the Christian Eriksen story. The Danish have proven to be a very, very good team, and obviously they have to navigate in a game. We'll find out what kind of team they have after the French game. But that's if we're talking about dark horses, outside of the names you just mentioned, the Danish will be in there. Look, I mean, the U.S. is also, I think, a team that if they can just find themselves where they clearly they're going to be the youngest team. They might have some naive moments out there, but sometimes that works. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what the U.S. team can do. I mean, some of the best World Cups we've ever had were the likes of DeMarcus Beasley and Landon Donovan were still teenagers, and they were out there. They didn't even know what they were doing. They were just having fun, and it ends up being great performances and getting into the quarterfinals, losing to Germany, where that guy Frings, the handball. If we had VAR back then, Andrew, who knows? Who knows? Maybe we get through that game, play against Korea. But the U.S. is kind of too hard to predict right now. But I'll go with the Danish. I like their story. I think they've got some talent in there. We've seen that before. I don't know if you remember this way back in '92, out of when I think somebody got disqualified. I think it was Portugal, and then they made it into the Euros. They were all on the beach drinking beer, and they got the call and say, "Hey, we got to go play in this tournament." And they won the whole damn thing. Fleming Poulsen and that gang. So I never count out the Danish. They put the Viking hat on and they go for it. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, I think Denmark to win their group could be quite a good bet, actually, because they're in with France and they've beaten them twice this year. And we've already spoken about how France, can self-destruct and implode somewhat. Denmark are currently plus 5,000 to go all the way. USA plus 22,500 at present. We will obviously check in on all of these prices and things next week when we record our next episode. As we say, everyone will have played a game by the time we next talk, so we'll start to have a feel for how the World Cup's shaping up. But before that, big games for England and the USA against Iran and Wales, respectively. We'll see how they get on. If you follow any of our tips, please gamble responsibly. The prices are correct at the time of recording. And please download the Vegas Insider app. But we will be back next week to look ahead to the second round of games. Thank you for joining us.